Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is another episode of To Back or Not to Back, going over all the board game Kickstarters, what to back, what not to back. That's really the name of this series over here, so not a lot of surprises over there. And I think this one will be a slightly shorter one than usual, although short is relative. These are usually in the 45 to an hour long range, and I think this is going to be close to 45, although ultimately time will tell. But apologies for the small little jump there. I basically just finished filming this and then realized that I totally forgot to talk about my newest segment, which I started last week. Basically Cult of the Old. And so for our Cult of the Old game this week, and specifically Cult of the Old is a segment I'm adding to my To Back or Not to Back videos, where I talk about an older game that is available very cheaply to remind you as you go through all these Kickstarters, or as I go through all these Kickstarters, that there are a lot of attractive, fun little games to check out and buy, but very often there are great, well-vetted games in retail available now for a reasonable price point. And speaking of reasonable price point, we have cartographers, which you can get on Amazon for, for goodness sake, you can get on Amazon with free shipping for $25, or you can get it from your local online game store for like $18 to $20 with whatever shipping order you want over there. Basically, for Cartographers has been around since 2019, well-vetted, well-loved game, about to crack the top 100, 7.7 on Board Game Geek. This is coming from Thunderworks Games. They have Cartographers, they have Cartographers Heroes. This is a beautiful roll and write game, a roll and write experience as you try to figure out flipping your cards, trying to achieve different objectives, different scoring objectives as you go through it. It is fun, it is accessible, it's been around for a while, and again, we're talking about a price point of like $18 to $25 for this. As we go through the rest of these videos, as we go through the rest of the games today, just remember that there are always fun retail games available to buy that are more well vetted and less of a risk and don't involve waiting a year and a half to get your hands on them. But from there, starting off with board game adjacent with the Tabletop Findit book. The Tabletop Findit book is basically I Spy for board games. It's going to be coming to you from Old Man Games. It's basically bringing you, like I said already, I Spy for board games. Just tons of pictures, some with a variety of games, some with a particular theme, some with a particular color spin. There's an entire page alone devoted to Dice Throne and Dice Throne stuff. Maybe it's Roxley stuff, I don't know. Either way, a whole bunch of different things. And like I said already, this is I Spy for board games. The basic idea is there's a whole bunch of stuff you want to find over here. Find 3 of these, find 2 of those, find 15 of these, all hidden within the picture. And then obviously you can do what you want past that. You can pass it to whoever you're playing with or whatever it is, or sitting there reading the book with, and say, great, I also found 14 of these, and go ahead and find those. It's going to be basically roughly $20 for the game, $20 plus shipping. Not game, for the book. It's a book, not a game, although it's a book full of games in a manner of speaking, so a little bit of both. But it's $20 for the book plus shipping, and currently I believe it has 20 pages plus stretch goals unlocking it. I think they currently have 2 in the stretch goals if I'm not mistaken, but I could be mistaken. But like I said already, this is basically an I Spy book for board games. You can check out a bunch of videos on the subject showing you the pictures. It looks absolutely amazing as far as the pictures. I'm very much compelled by, just by sitting there staring at the pictures. I've seen some of these images on Facebook, and every single time I see one of these images, I'm absolutely enraptured is a different word, enraptured by the art being shown here. I'm trying to find the Roxley one. The Roxley one was very, very, very cool, although I don't see it here. Maybe it's an update. It might have been an update. But either way, that's the Tabletop Tabletop Findit book. I don't tend to talk about should you back it, should you not on these. I don't know what the resale value on something like this would be, whether it makes sense to get it or not. Ultimately, if you're interested in it, this is likely the best place to get it, although it might be available after. This is more of a informative thing, although I guess less informative than I actually would want, so only halfway informative. In any case, moving on to DVG, Valiant Defense, Wreckland Ridge, and then speaking of not that informative, I'm only halfway informative on this one as well. In general, DVG games are something that is a little bit outside the wheelhouse. I don't know if I've ever played a DVG title, and I don't tend to know as much about these. This one is going to be continuing the series, though. There's a specific series of games. It's designed by David Thompson, I think I want to say. Designed by, why can't I find his name? David Thompson. Yeah, David Thompson, who's done a bunch of games both in the wargame genre and in the wargame adjacent genre. So I know him more from the wargame adjacent genre, things like War Chest, things like the Undaunted series, the title over on, he had a title with Blacklist Games. He's just coming out with a solo game as well, but he does a lot of stuff, and this is going to be some of the previous designs in the series: Palace House, Castle Itter, Soldiers in Postman uniforms. It's a solo survival game as you try to figure out how to keep your morale up and rebel the troops in this solo battle simulator. That's as far as I know about the general gameplay aspect of the game. As far as to back it or not to back, generally in this one I'm going to say probably not, although of course factor in what your motivations are for backing or not backing. but $60 for the base pledge. DVG games in general follow a fairly standard trend. Their games tend to be available cheaper after the fact. There's not really anything as far as exclusives in the Kickstarter, and they tend to not hold a value in the secondhand market either. So it's one that if you get it on Kickstarter, you're paying more than it'll cost in retail if you're willing to be patient, and you're likely not going to get your money back on the secondhand market, because why would you? It costs more than it does in retail. Doesn't mean you shouldn't get it. If you want to get it first, if you want to support the publisher, those are other reasons to get it. But as far as the price point alone, generally DVG games are not the best to get on Kickstarter. They're great to get, they're well rated, well loved, but Kickstarter tends to be not to be the best place for them. From there, we have Make 100, a subsistence card game with 351 backers, $4,000 raised, and I don't even know why I'm covering this, in the sense that you can't actually get this game. I mean, I'm talking about it, so you can sort of get it, but you're basically backing a print and play only, because this is Make 100. There's 100 copies and 100 copies only of this game. And so if you want to get this, if you're one of the 351 backers, well, 251 of you, plus whoever else joins, is only currently getting a print and play copy of the game, although granted, you don't have to pay a lot of money for that, but you're getting a PMP copy of the game. It might be interested in it, and I think that a Make 100 that got, 4 times its funding goal in terms of the number of backers, I think is something worth talking about. But this is basically a light little game of trying to figure out across 9 rounds, the whole entire game is 36 cards, 2 to 4 player game. You're trying to figure out how to most optimize your placements and get the resources you need. It's a light, simple game that feels very reminiscent of button shy games in terms of the package it's giving you. I mean, ultimately 36 cards total, and that's for a 2 to 4 player experience. That's pretty decent over here. The Make 100 has 3 different divisions of what you can get, so if you are someone who's keeping your eye on the Kickstarter to see if someone drops out, which can happen, then you can quickly snatch up one of those. We have the 45 New Zealand dollars, so it's cheaper, $30 or $17 for the deluxe or the basic box. There's a different pledge level over here. There's 40, 10, and 50. It looks like the extra 10 over there is an early bird, so it's 60 and 40, but 10 of those are going to be early bird. But that's basically what you're getting over here. It's a fun little, light little, I don't know if it's fun, I haven't played it, but it looks like a fun, simple, accessible game that clearly has been more popular than they anticipated. Maybe they'll come back to Kickstarter, maybe they'll do another option, or alternatively, you can get your hands on the print and play. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? Based on the price point, I'm just skeptical that it will. If you're getting the print and play, obviously it's a different conversation, but even these, I mean, on the one hand, there's not a lot of copies in existence, so it's possible someone will want to track it down for an actual copy they don't have to print themselves. On the other hand, usually smaller games do have a harder time holding the value, so definitely in the risk camp over there. Moving on to 2022 Crokinole board, Season 7. This is going to be the Crokinole board from Mayday Games, I want to say. In general, Mayday Games have been putting out these Crokinole boards for a while. Like I said already, Season 7 over here. We have 2,500 backers, $300,000 raised, and that's because these boards in general are, I want to say they're generally acknowledged as being the budget but not bad Crokinole board available. Meaning, if you're someone who wants to try Crokinole and you don't want to pay $200 to $400 or possibly even more to get your hands on a Crokinole board, the Mayday Games Crokinole line of boards has been very, very affordable at $100 plus shipping. They've had roughly that price point for a long time. They say in the Kickstarter it might go up, and it may well go up. In general, prices across the industry are rising, although obviously who knows until it actually happens, but they do say this is likely the last time it'll be as cheap as it is. Again, marketing, so maybe that's true, maybe it's not, we'll see. But overall, the Mayday line of Crokinole boards has been generally well received, meaning I'm not saying there's no complaints at all, but I think most people seem to have a fairly high opinion for the price point to quality of what you'd expect there. You're not getting a $200 to $300 board, you're not getting a $400 board, you're getting a $100 board, and it will do the job. It's a great access point to Crokinole for people who haven't tried it and understandably don't want to shell out $300 plus for the Crokinole board. I have an amazing Crokinole board that I love, that I adore. Crokinole is one of my favorite games. It is such a fun experience. It is the best flicking game. It is the flicking game that makes all other flicking games seem like they're not worth playing. And it's expensive. But I got it because I had the opportunity to try out Crokinole and knew that it was something I wanted to invest in, and it's a beautiful board. But again, if you're not that person, if you're not there yet, this is a great entry point. As far as holding its value, it's a little trickier, primarily because of shipping costs. Honestly, the $100 for the game for the game itself, plus shipping as well, plus you have to factor in that if you're selling to somebody else, the shipping as well there. So you're most likely going to lose on the shipping compared to someone who could just buy it directly from Crokinole, from Mayday Games themselves. So I don't know if it's necessarily going to hold its value. It's certainly not going to be a bad back, and if you know someone local, you should be able to sell it easily enough. but if you want to jump in on Crokinole, which I do recommend as an amazing experience that will, I mean, it's a piece of art as much as it is a board game. I like Crokinole. Crokinole's excellent. Check out Shut Up and Sit Down's review. I don't actually know if they like Crokinole, but I'm assuming if Mayday Games put them on the page, I'm assuming they like Crokinole, and Crokinole's it's just delightful. It really is. It makes every other flicking game I have ever played not as good. In any case, moving on to, speaking of games that make other games not as good, Mind MGMT Secret Missions. 6,300, I think. Didn't this cross 500,000? No, cross 500,000 Canadian. That's what it was. I saw in the updates it crossed 500,000. I'm like, that's not 500,000, but it crossed 500k Canadian. 6,361 backers, and the reason that's relevant is because it's a Canadian run company. It's a Canadian run campaign. Jay Cormier is Sen Fung Lim. They're both Canadian, so that's the whole 500,000. But either way, $400,000 raised, 6,300 backers. This is the best or tied for the best hidden movement game I've ever played. I say tied for the best because I still do love Beast. We'll talk more about Beast when it actually hits retail, when it's in its final form, but they're both up there for me. They both absolutely destroy the other hidden movement games I have played, but Mind MGMT is absolutely fantastic. Let's focus on that one for today. Mind MGMT is a fantastic game. I put it as my #1 game of 2021, easy to put it in that category. I think it was somewhere around my 30th highest game of all time, like 30 or 32 or something like that, as far as my highest game of all time as of 2021, and I expect that to grow. It's a game I continue to dive into. It's like I continue to play it time and time again, continue to pull out those shift packets and enjoy it. Mind MGMT is basically a hidden movement game that plays in 30 to 60 minutes, accommodates a variety of player counts. It plays well at 2, it plays well at 3 and 4. I haven't tried 5, although according to Board Game Geek ratings, it plays well at 5 as well. And it's an incredible experience, one that I predict, like I guarantee, and I've only said this a handful of times, and the handful of times I've said it, I've so far been right, but Mind MGMT, I expect it to be in the top 100 games on Board Game Geek. I think the only reason it is not yet there is because ratings on Board Game Geek are a combination of how popular the game is, how many copies there are, how many people rated it, and what those ratings are. This is going to put this game into 6,000 more people's hands, probably 10,000 by the time it's done, somewhere in that range, and that's going to be another 10,000 people who can rate and review the game, and they're also putting out a retail line at the same time. And I think this is going to be in the Board Game Geek Top 100 because it's that good. It is simple, it is easy to play, it is easy to explain, it is easy to dive into. It gives you the hidden movement game in, like I said already, 30 minutes to 60 minutes, making it very accessible. You can play 2 or 3 games, 4 or 5 games in an evening, alternating back and forth, giving people a rotating chance to be the recruiter, to be the Mind MGMT. It's a ton of fun, a great game, one that I was skeptical of when I was first on Kickstarter. The last time I was on Kickstarter was when I was first doing these 2 back and not to back videos, and I was very clear how skeptical I was that it would hold its value, and I was absolutely wrong. Speaking of which, should you back it, should you not, as far as holding its value, at least as of right now, all the deluxe copies that are currently in existence are currently holding the value just fine in the secondhand market. If you got your hands on a deluxe copy, they're going for $125 to $150 on Board Game Geek on the used marketplace because you can't currently get your hands on them. They're all out of print at the moment. This is the reprinting, so if you want to wait for a chunk of time, for looks like estimated August 2022, that's when you're estimated to get this, which means there's a delay on that. So I do recommend getting your hands on this because it's that good a game. What I will say is that I don't think you need the deluxe copy. The deluxe copy is very nice, but it's going to cost you a pretty penny extra, and it's going to be nice, but it's a lot of money extra for no gameplay, just wooden deluxeified components. Is it great if you're someone who's willing to do that? Absolutely. Do you need to pay that to get access to this game? No, you don't. You can wait for a retail edition of the game and get a plain retail copy that will give you the same amazing gameplay experience. I mean, I give it a 5 out of 5. Based on the retail version. I then bought the deluxe version of the game. And this Kickstarter, probably a little bit late in this conversation, but this Kickstarter is also bringing you these secret missions as an extra add-on to the game. So if you're someone who already has Mind MGMT, there's still a reason to be paying attention to the Kickstarter, because they both have a playing card deck that has a tiny degree of gameplay of Mind MGMT, but also the art of the same of Matt Kint, I believe. Is it the art of Matt Kint? I think it's the art of Matt Kint. But either way, then they have secret missions, which are all these cards you have the opportunity to unlock based on finding little clues in the rulebook or on packages in the original game. This gives you printable copies of those cards for people who found those or want those, but don't want to deal with the hassle of a print and play themselves or just having a printed copy, and I fall squarely in that camp. So all around, Great game, will hold its value, especially if you're getting the deluxe edition of the game. And yeah, if you're in any way on the fence, I highly recommend Mind MGMT. Moving from there to Old London Bridge from Queen Games. 467 backers, $36,000 raised, and Queen Games seems to be slightly breaking their usual Kickstarter mold these days. The pattern they have found themselves in the past several Kickstarters is either the deluxe city collection from Stefan Feld, or alternatively giving you a retail edition of a game with a few acrylic tokens to make it Kickstarter or whatnot, and that's basically it. But it seems they're not currently doing that. It seems this one's going to be purely more focused on the retail, giving you a little expansion included, and they're not even clear if the expansion is Kickstarter exclusive or not. And Old London Bridge is a game of rebuilding Old London Bridge. The players are all contributing to the rebuilding as you gather these various tiles and you try to slot them into the board over here, but you have to do so being mindful of the descending order of the tiles. So if you don't plan appropriately, if you don't plan properly, you'll have to replace tiles instead of adding to your building. So there's a degree of trying to activate the actions, the abilities as you place these tiles, while also trying to be mindful of the order of those tiles so you can most efficiently, well, win the game ideally. It looks fun and simple set collection. Looks like a standard Queen's game in the sense that it may well be a ton of fun, very endearing, very appealing, or it also might be completely forgettable. I find Queen Games, more so than many companies, that's actually not true, along with many companies, puts out games that are both amazing, fun, accessible. Speaking of which, I have not played Luxor, but I have played Kokopelli, and I really enjoy Kokopelli. I think Kokopelli is fantastic, and they have a few options to get some of these bundles over here with the extras, with the acrylics or whatnot. I'm going to be focusing more on Old London Bridge for the sake of this whole thing, because otherwise I have to go into all the bundles of a bunch of other games, which I'm not going to do. You can check out some content in the game. We have gaming rules, we have Rado, a few other channels as well, going over some content of the game, further how it plays, or gameplays around the experience. Overall, this is one that I am skeptical will hold its value. There's no real Kickstarter exclusive or anything else. It's a $49 game with nothing extra to give you a reason to get it on Kickstarter, except for the discount on the retail price. But once you factor in shipping, this will be cheaper in retail. This is going to be not that different than Scrap Racers or any of the other games where you can get the plain copy of the game, get it in retail, and get it for cheaper. Most Queen games that fall into this category don't do a great job holding the value on the secondhand market. I believe you'll get this game cheaper both in pure retail, as well as the fact that I do not think it'll hold its value in the secondhand market if it's a game that turns out to not be for you. Looks compelling. I do want to play this. I mean, it's Leo Calvini, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check. Leo Calvini, yeah, so I do definitely want to play it. Looks great, but it's one that I'm not going to be getting on Kickstarter. Moving on, we have Wreckland Run, a solo game from the creators of Warp's Edge. This, like, well, the game we just covered, is giving you both content for Wreckland Run, as well as the new Anomaly expansion for Warp's Edge. That is important to pay attention to. This is giving you content for Warp's Edge, not just Wreckland Run. So before you skip to the next timestamp on this video, if you are interested in content for Warp's Edge, that's the new expansion for Warp's Edge, okay? So just we're very clear, this is both going on here. But Wreckland Run, I covered this game already. This is basically a solo experience, continuing the solo hero series from Renegade Games, continuing the whole aspect that they started with a game before Warp's Edge that I always forget, Proving Grounds. They started with Proving Grounds, which was okay received in terms of, it was okay received. It was received okayly. It was received decently, that's the word I'm looking for. It was received decently, but certainly no accolades. Warp's Edge, on the other hand, that one was definitely received with a lot more buzz and hype around the game, both of them giving you a solo experience, and this one seems to be continuing, is continuing the solo hero series of games with another, well, solo experience, as you are basically Mad Maxing your way through the wilderness, escaping from the various people you've managed to tick off as you try to steal things or run away or do whatever it is, and then they send their cars around you, and you have to figure out how to roll your dice across several rounds of gameplay, trying to basically survive, trying to take out these cars that are chasing you, ultimately to deal with the boss in the third round, and hopefully deal with him, take him or her out of the equation, and survive along the way. There's a whole lot of surviving going on here, as you try to stop your vehicle's core from self-destructing, or not self-destructing so much as being destructed by all the people attacking you. That's basically what's going on in Wreckland Run. Now, the Kickstarter is going to give you the Wreckland Run core game, as well as the Wreckland Run Fallout expansion. That is not going to be Kickstarter exclusive, but is going to be Kickstarter limited, or whatever you want to call the terminology they utilize. Basically, you can get it over here on Kickstarter, or you can get it directly from the publisher at conventions or their website or things like that, but it will not be making its way into general retail. That's going to be true for a lot of the things we cover. In fact, in the FAQ, they do a great job breaking down exactly how this campaign works as far as exclusives. Will everything in this Kickstarter campaign be available after the fact? They go into everything from both Wreckland Run as well as the Warp's Edge, covering exactly what to get and how to get it. But for the most part, it comes down to the base games will make their way into general retail. The expansions and some of the extras and things like playmats, those are more limited in their general availability. So that's basically what's going on here. So if you don't want to track them down by going directly to Renegade and paying the Renegade price on their website, then you may as well get on a Kickstarter. So for the most part, for all of the stuff over here, if you are interested in the game and if you want those extras, the Kickstarter is likely the best place to get it. That's going to be true for Warp's Edge as well. If you look at the last Kickstarter for Warp's Edge, in general, the Kickstarter pledges did just fine holding their value. The limited expansion, as well as the playmat and all those extras, those copies of Warp's Edge held their value just fine, although, and this can be true for Wreckland Run as well, if you don't care about some of the extras, if you just want the cheapest entry point into the game, then waiting for the retail edition of the game and not getting any of the extras is the way to go. Warp's Edge is a game that you can get at secondhand for like $25, something like that, or even less than that, and you can get it new from your local retailer for $25 or online shipping, whatever it is, for free as part of a $100 order. So there are definitely games that there are cheaper ways to get them. It just depends on if you want the extras, if you want the expansions, if you want all of that. And speaking of which, if you want it, the price point is basically $40 for the Wreckland Run and the Fallout expansion. So that's a pretty decent value. That'll run you about $50 with shipping. I think $52, depends on where you are, but $52 total with shipping to get the base game and the expansion. The Get Wrecked for $70 will give you all that, plus the playmat and sleeves. Having played the game, I think the playmat is nice. I don't think it's essential. And sleeves in general, I tend to recommend Sleeve Kings, although it depends on what you're looking for. And then for $90, we have the core game for Warp's Edge, as well as basically everything's Warp's Edge. For everything for Warp's Edge to get you complete up to speed, for $90, for $95, it's Wreck and Roll, which gives you the Wreckland Run core game expansion playmat sleeves, as well as the Anomaly expansion. This is great for you if you like this game and the series and you want the new expansion content. And then from there we have the Wreck Everything for $175. Worth noting, you also save like $3-4 extra on shipping, so not a huge savings, but the shipping price actually goes down for that higher pledge level as far as what they have listed in the shipping chart over there. But overall, great game. For the most part, it will hold its value if you're getting the basic extras, just because of the limited aspect to the playmat, to the expansion, and all of that. Moving on to Rolling Heights from AEG. An amazing game, 1,800 backers, $100,000 raised, 11 days to go, and this one is a tough one. So let's start with the basic gameplay. The basic gameplay is basically Cubitos, Quacks of Quedlinburg, that kind of style of push your luck game. It's from John D. Clear, the designer of Cubitos, and it's a game that I wrote off initially as being, hey, why would I play this when I could just play Cubitos instead, because I read the rules and it didn't seem that compelling. And then I played it, and I really like it. This game is simple, it is elegant, it is fun, and it's addicting to build up your city. It's addicting to roll your meeples in a way that is actually more compelling than it is to roll dice, and it's just something. And I'm skeptical. Like, I mean, I'm not skeptical anymore. If you're skeptical, I get it. I was skeptical too. Rolling meeples seems fiddlier than rolling dice. Rolling dice are predictable. It's stable. There's something nice about knowing this die has 6 faces and I can understand exactly how to roll it and I understand the ratios, and all of that goes completely out the window with meeples, but there's something compelling about that degree of unknown. There's something compelling about just rolling a handful of meeples, seeing which ones land exactly on their feet, seeing which ones land on their side, and then utilizing towards building your buildings. You're going to be taking buildings on the board, slotting them onto various locations on the grid, on the map effectively, and then trying to build them out based on how your meeples roll, based on the construction that they have. It is fun, it is engaging, it is a lot of fun. It's one of those games that my wife is still upset with me that I have to get rid of the prototype because we just all like the game. But that's basically the game over there, which brings us to the pledge level. The pledge levels is really one pledge level, $59 for the game, plus the bonus tiles and mini expansion. So you're getting 2 discounts, so to speak, as far as getting this game on Kickstarter versus retail. The first, you're saving $20 off the MSRP. The MSRP is going to be $79, and you're getting it over here for $59. As usual, that's not that great of a deal, because once you factor in the shipping, you're basically paying not more than $60. You're paying $70 on an $80 MSRP to get your hands in the game, which is more than you will pay if you just wait till retail and get it at your online local game store, whatever it is, down the road. So price point alone, there's not a reason to get this on Kickstarter, which brings us to the little miniature expansion, which is where the competition gets a little iffier and harder to gauge. Over here, if you get it on Kickstarter, you'll be getting the following. You'll be getting the bonus minigame with this little King Kong mini beast that will be tackling buildings or doing whatever, as well as 5 bonus building tiles. Estimated MSRP is $10, but it's exclusive, so it basically is just either worth it or not to you. And so the real question is the price point you're paying on Kickstarter, combined with the discount, combined with the shipping price, combined with all of that, is it worth it to you personally? So there's 2 different factors here. The first is, like I said already, if your goal is just the cheapest game and you don't care about 5 extra tiles, because why would you? There's 60, 70 tiles as it is. I don't know exactly how many there are, but there's a decent amount of tiles as it is. If you don't need those 5 extra, and I guarantee you, you will never notice they're gone. Like many promos, and I have to do a video on promos at some point, but like many promos where it's just another card, just another thing, most of the time, the only reason you want it is because you know it exists, and you'll rarely ever actually notice the difference if it's not there. So that aspect alone, again, I get FOMO's hard. I have that problem all the time as well, trust me. But if you're just worried about that, you can get this game at retail, it'll be cheaper, and you won't be missing out. As far as the bonus minigame, that's a little trickier, although I would say if it's just that one meeple, which it seems to be, MGMT, then honestly you can probably find the rules online and just substitute anything to replace that one meeple. So it seems to be more of a rules thing than any real content, although again, it depends on whether you care or not. So overall, I think it comes down to two things. The first is, do you care enough to spend the extra $10, $15 now versus retail to get this game with those extras? The answer might be yes, in which case, enjoy. It's a great game. I love it. The second aspect in the conversation is, will it hold its value in the secondhand market? And there I'm more in the middle. I just don't know, because as much as I say that, hey, you don't need these promos and you won't notice if they're gone, this is a good game. I believe it'll be well rated by many people. I believe it'll be enjoyed by many people. And to that end, when you have a good game with limited content, usually that limited content helps it hold its value. So I think this game will hold its value in the secondhand market. I think getting those promos will be harder down the road, but it's a bit of a toss-up whether it's worth it to you, and it's certainly not a guarantee. It's me just projecting the fact that everyone I know who's played it has liked this game, and that does contribute to me thinking that the deluxe exclusives will be harder to track down if you miss out on the Kickstarter, although AEG does sometimes bring things back to Kickstarter, so maybe we'll see it in the future. And that's basically Rolling Heights. Fantastic game, just a question of whether you should get it retail or here, but you should definitely get it. Although, I mean, if you don't want to get it, then don't. Save your money. That's good. That's a good thing to save your money. Which brings us to the Unfair expansion. The comic book, Hacker, Kaiju, Ocean, and Solo. This basically, well, Solo's not a faction. It's a solo mode for the game. Unfair, which basically is coming to you from Good Games Publishing. They were in association with Command, like originally on Kickstarter. But either way, Unfair is basically a game where you're building out your theme park. They had the original expansion. They were the original game. They had the Alien B-movie, Dinosaur, and Western expansion. Then they had Funfair, which they still have. It's still available. Funfair is basically the nicer, more streamlined version of Unfair. Less depth, less variety to the experience, but streamlined and just less meanness to the experience. Because some of what you do in this game is you do mean things in the game. You do absolutely shut down people's rides, send inspectors their way, have guests avoid their park. It's a combination of building your own theme park up as well as getting in the way of other players, both the game itself through the events as well as you, because you're just that kind of person. Unfair is now coming to you with 4 more decks, and in general the way the game plays is depending on the player count, you're going to shuffle in a variable number of decks, and you're going to have different variety to the experience, different cards, different themes, different ways the game kind of, and each deck has a flavor in terms of how mean, how aggressive, how this, how that, more upgrades, more rides, more roller coasters, whatever kind of thing. Each deck has a different way that they are bringing a little bit of their own feel, their own spin, in addition to the great art and the names and the theme and all that to the table. But that's basically what we have over here, plus we have a solo mode, which is also going to contribute to the higher MSRP of this expansion compared to the last one. The MSRPs are $49 for the original game, $35 for the first expansion, and $40 for the Unfair expansion, which brings us to the should you back it, should you not, and that one is very complicated. It's actually not that complicated. It's a little complicated. It's a little complicated because we're dealing with the current price versus the price of the unknown. Effectively, the price you're being asked to pay in this Kickstarter for these games is the full retail price for all of these games. You're getting no discount whatsoever, and to be fair, they're very clear about the fact that, hey, you can get these expansions and base game on the Kickstarter, or you can get them from our current available retail partners. So you could go ahead directly and get them from there, and I think it's likely that they just don't want to undercut their retail partners with the Kickstarter, which is good for them. But overall, the price point you're being asked to pay is full MSRP. That on its own would be a straight up no. Why would you do this? You can actively get the base game and the retail expansion from your online local game store, your friendly local game store, and pay a cheaper price point to get your hands on these. So why would you pay more to additionally wait to get your hands on these down the road? The second side of the thing, though, the flip side, is that they do say that the MSRPs are likely going up, which again is currently standard in the board game industry. We are seeing that across the board, so that's likely true. Overall, the reason it's still not that complicated is while the prices of the games are likely going up, while the MSRP is likely going up, I do think that this is likely a higher price point. Even when you factor that in, I think it's still likely a higher price point than just waiting to get your hands on retail. Although there is still a catch, because we have to go back and forth with although this, although that. The last catch is you are getting some form of not really exclusives, but kind of early access by getting on the Kickstarter. What I mean by that is they're doing the same thing in this Kickstarter that they did in the last one, which is they're basically saying, hey, by the way, here are some extra cards from future decks over here. So if you want to get a taste of extra cards, if you're willing to mix in some extra promo cards from future expansion and future concepts that they plan on bringing to the table, then you can get your hands on those in this Kickstarter, and you will not get those at retail. So it's a weird kind of exclusive, because it's not really an exclusive, it's kind of early access. Although the last time they did an early access thing like this, they had basically, people had cards for a year, 2 years, 3 years, I don't even know how much it was, but it was a decent amount of time that they had some of the cards from future expansions. So it's kind of a combination of the unknown of the price point down the road, and then the early access aspect. So you have to decide what those are worth to you as far as the early access as well as the unknown. I would say as far as holding its value, I don't think it'll hold its value in the secondhand market. If you get it on Kickstarter, I think that you are paying a bit of a premium. You're supporting the publisher, which is great. You're supporting a small company. All of that stuff's great, but you are paying a slightly higher premium to get your hands in it now on Kickstarter versus at retail. Moving on to Astro Knights. Astro Knights from Indie Boards and Cards. Astro Knights is bringing you the streamlined version of Aeon's End. Aeon's End is still continuing, it's still doing its thing, but Astro Knights is basically bringing you similar gameplay, similar high notes of the two games, but in a smaller, more accessible package as far as what it's trying to do, as far as what it's bringing to the table. Astro Knights is basically a game which you're fighting off against a big bad, as you and the other players take control of different characters, and you're trying to power up and level up and protect the homeworld and deck build in this game, and Aeon's End and Astro Knights share the same aspect of a deck that you never really shuffle. You're building out your deck, you're planning out your cards, you're rotating through the engine, but you never really shuffle your deck, which gives you a higher degree of control around what's going on. Combine that with a few different decks. You have tech, you have your actual your energy, your currency of the game, and you also have your weapons in the game, and combine that with the character abilities and the homeworld ability and the combination of the big bad that you're fighting against and the way you can augment them, both in terms of the general difficulty scaling as well as the unique extra nightmare modes you can add to the big bad, gives you a lot of variety and experience in what Astro Knights is bringing to the table. I already reviewed this. You can check out the review on the channel. As far as should you get it or not, why would you get it on Kickstarter? Well, starting off, the price point over here is $39 for a base pledge of Astro Knights, $59 for the all-in, which is basically a playmat, which I haven't made up my mind on the playmat just because it looks ridiculously messy. It might be amazing, it might be very functional, but we played the game just fine without the playmat, and the playmat just looks very, very cluttered on a personal level. This is just me just extrapolating my personal level. Let me see if I can find it over here. I want to find the playmat. Over here, you can see the playmat over here. This is the playmat over here. It just looks messy to me. Again, there are cards on the table. It will help you organize it to a degree, but I don't know. That playmat's not personally calling me. Although, to be fair, I have a bias against playmats that don't fit in the box anyway. But that's aside from the fact. That's besides the point. Let's talk about the $39 the $39 pledge over here, which is giving you the base game as well as the Orion System expansion. And the Orion System expansion is basically all the daily unlocks you're getting in this campaign. Because pure price point alone, getting it at retail would be cheaper. This is going to be similar to Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition compared to Terraforming Mars. Getting it at retail will be cheaper for the pure base game if you don't care about the promos, which means it comes down to those promos. It comes down to you care about those extras. This game will have dual layer player boards, although dual layer is not really true. It's more like they punched holes in the board to track your things, which works for me. I don't really care. It seems to do the job, although it does potentially make moving your board a little harder, so mostly the same job as dual layered. But over here we have the games funded, we have a bunch of extras, we have the promos, the exclusive. The difference between the two are promos will potentially be available on, Board Game Geek store or whatnot, or the website, and Kickstarter exclusive is what it sounds like. It's pure Kickstarter exclusive. So the promo pack you get in the expansion is a mix of exclusive content and promo content. Either way, not stuff that's generally available at retail. And then they're slowly unlocking things. They have a new boss, the Fish and Parasite over here. That's a big deal. That's more than just a card. That's a full new boss to the experience. And then more cards. And we still have, what do we have? 10 days left, 11 days to go on the campaign. Should you back it? Will it hold its value? The first conversation is, do you care about those promos, and are you going to track them down either on the secondhand market or anywhere else? And some of those are Kickstarter exclusive, which means some of them have to be the secondhand market. So the first question is, do you care about those promotional material or not? Second question is, will it hold its value or not? And the answer is kind of a maybe. If you look at Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, which I think is the closest comparable game we have, the Kickstarter copy of that held its value just fine, and it followed a similar model of a daily promo. The main difference is that had dual layer player boards that was to the Kickstarter copy alone, as opposed to over here, the punch through player boards that give you that better player board is to all the copies. So that is a big difference over there as far as the general demand. I think it'll still do a decent job holding most of its value, if not all its value, but it's less of a guarantee. You might lose a few bucks on that if you buy the game on Kickstarter. If you find out it's not a game for you and now you have the Kickstarter version of the game with all the promo packs, I think you can turn around and sell it and get most of your money back, but probably less so than we saw with Ares Expedition. As far as whether you should get it or not, again, your options are retail for cheaper or getting it on Kickstarter, where you will pay a little bit more, but you will at least get those promos, that extra boss, that extra stuff, and we have 11 days to go to see what else gets added to the pack. If they add 2 or 3 bosses, that's a ton of gameplay content. A single card, I'm not so impressed by, but a boss, that is a much bigger deal as far as what's being added to the game. We might see a new hero character. That could be a much bigger deal as far as the amount of content and the experience that they are bringing to the table. Which brings us to Kabula. Kabula, a reprint expansion, not a reprint, a relaunch expansion. This time it's funded, $33,000, 296 backers, 14 days to go. This is an adventure board game that is leaning heavily into the zaniness of the experience. It's going to be an adventure board game. You're going to have your heroes. You're going to have two different pledge levels over here. You have the €50 and the €99, which is basically a question of whether you want the full miniature package or not, or whether you're comfortable with the light package with just the standees, call it a day. We also have the add-on expansions. We have the conspiracy expansion, the outrageous, the not safe for word card, or the not safe for work cards. We have the wood and metal coins over there. All these extra things you can buy, all these extras, and including if you're doing the standee pledge, you can also buy the STL files in order to print those yourself if you're someone who has a 3D printer, if you want to go through that, all of that stuff over there, leading to $139, €139 for the all-in price point on this campaign. The game leans heavily into the zaniness of the experience. King of Ravage has a review on it. I believe I saw Professor Meg has something on it. There's a whole bunch of content around the game. I have not played this one myself. I've had a chance to look through the rulebook a bit, but I don't love the zaniness of these things. If you give me games with like that are leaning heavily into just a weird world, I'm happy it works for some people. I'm happy it's definitely unique and different as far as a theme, but this is something that does not pull me at all. It's just too crazy. I just don't like that level of craziness unless it's like a party game kind of thing. But either way, that's basically what Kabula is. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? So first of all, Kickstarter is likely your best place to get it. I don't imagine this is going to retail. I know they have plans that they hope it goes to retail, but that's very different than it actually happening. And with 296 backers, it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder to find someone to convince them that this is a game that is worth picking up, that there's enough demand for it to work, to make sense. And the price point, even on the standee version, is not cheap for the game. So it might make its way to retail, but I would certainly say it's not a guarantee. As far as the actual pledge on the secondhand market, I think it won't hold its value. In general, this is a game that is a zany theme, and it's not a cheap game with a zany theme. I'm happy it exists for those who are interested in it, but I just don't see this one overall holding its value in the secondhand market. I just see it having a hard time. Again, in general, when you see low demand on the Kickstarter, that low demand will likely translate into low demand on the secondhand market as well if it's not a game for you. Moving on to Floating Floors. $13,000, 574 backers, 14 days to go. This is coming to you from Meeple University, although technically it's actually coming to you from Gulf Studios, but the same people as Meeple University, so if you like any of their content, this is also a great way to support them, in addition to Patreon or whatever it is that they, I don't know if they have Patreon, I don't even know, but maybe they don't have Patreon. Maybe they do have Patreon, which you should check that out, but maybe they don't have Patreon and you appreciate Meeple University, and this is a good opportunity to go ahead and back one of their games. But that's kind of the side point. Let's go ahead and actually talk about the game before I try to tell you to back the game for any other reasons. But in any case, Floating Floors, and by the way, in case you ask, yes, I absolutely am biased, because meaning if you're like, well, why are you saying back them to support them, they're a content creator, why aren't you supporting these other small companies? And the answer is, in general, you could and always should consider whether you want to support the company behind the game. But yes, I'm definitely more biased towards a content creator, being a content creator myself, so yeah, that's just me being biased. I'll give you that 100%. In any case, moving on to the actual game itself. The game itself is Floating Floors. Floating Floors I've talked about already in my upcoming Kickstarters video, but effectively it's a balancing game in a way that I haven't personally seen done before in other balancing games. Every single round you're going to be getting your pieces over there that you're trying to put out on the board, both to create a foundation on the table, as well as to actually put them on the cards themselves to change the balance as well as the coloring of the various zones, because your ninjas are trying to wander around from zone to zone, trying to stay on their color but maintaining the balance of the board. You're going to create a foundation, you can rotate cards, all these things you can do in the game, but it's an interesting game in the sense that it's asymmetric balance. That's what it is. You're operating together on the same board, so you have the same board that you would have in many games, and you have balancing like you'd have in many games, but it's asymmetric balancing in the sense that what you do is ideally suited to be best for you, and it might mess with your opponent, and vice versa. So it's just an interesting combination of asymmetry while balancing, while operating within a shared sphere, which again, I haven't seen that combination of things done before. You can check out the Kickstarter video. They do a great job, which I imagine makes sense. They do videos. You can check out the Kickstarter video for the how to play, as far as, just going through everything I said, but just with more visual aids showing you how everything plays out. But that's effectively Floating Floors. As far as pledge levels is going to come in at $25 for the game. That's going to be the Ninja Master. That's the only pledge they really have. And that's giving you the access to the game, as well as giving you the free backer gift, the 4 Ninja trading cards. It's basically 4 Ninja trading cards where you can put your little thing on and you can train and practice before your round. That's going to be this over here. That's the only real thing extra and compared to the getting it at retail or waiting for it down the road, which is these extra cards, which they're saying, hey, they might not be available that much, or maybe limited availability. So that's the only real extra there. As far as should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value, will it not? Ultimately, same thing as I said for many of these campaigns. I am skeptical that this one will hold its value. It's a smaller, cheaper game. Those things do have a harder time holding the value on the secondhand market, and I think that's likely to hold true as well. As far as whether to get it now or at retail or down the road, with 576 backers, I imagine there's a decent chance it makes its way to retail. That's twice as many as Kabula. It does make it a big difference, and it's for a significantly cheaper price point that makes it much, much easier to actually get this game to retail. So I do think we'll see it in retail, but I'm also not confident, although it's from the co-publisher of Endless Winter and Steam Up the Feast for Dim Sum, so they may already have the retail partnerships lined up in that sense, if that is who I think it is. So we'll see. But overall, I would say your options are are getting it at retail, getting it on the Kickstarter, getting it in the secondhand market. If you want to lock it in guaranteed, Kickstarter is the way to go, but it's a decent chance that it will be cheaper at retail if it makes its way to retail, and for sure it's one that, well, not for sure, but likely is one that will not hold its value on the secondhand market. Moving on to Hand-to-Hand Wombat. Hand-to-Hand Wombat from the creators of Exploding Kittens. 11,000 backers, $620,000 raised. Hand-to-Hand Wombat is the game of hidden social deduction, blindfolded social deduction. Now, the video is actually adorable. You should totally watch the video. I highly recommend watching it because it looks like an entertaining concept, although I do have my doubts. So Hand-to-Hand Wombat continues Exploding Kittens line of games where they give you an interesting concept, a fun little creative idea. I like how they have a tagline of, they used to have the concept of making games that are fun, but then they decided to make games that make people fun. So some line like that is a very cute line and a very cute concept. The idea that you can take a game and use that to make the people playing the game have fun, as opposed to the game itself just being fun on its own. They had a better way of phrasing it. Ignore what I'm saying and just watch the video. But Hand-to-Hand Wombat is going to have 4 characters, 4 players who are blindfolded or just covering their eyes. I don't actually know if it's included as far as a blindfold, but 4 players who can't see what's going on as they try to either build the towers in order or try to deconstruct them. So you're talking to the other players, you're like, oh yeah, I have the lowest level, and you're putting it down and you're grabbing different things, but other players who are also doing the same thing, they're trying to deconstruct the tower, also blindfolded. So you have people who are actually trying to be the good wombats, creating everything, and you have people who are trying to get in the way, trying to destroy things, all while pretending to talk and communicate. So you might have a player who's like, yeah, I just built the foundation of the tower, and then you feel what they just built, and you're like, oh, maybe not, and then someone's like, no, that person must have taken it out of the way, and you're swearing up and down, left, right, and center that no, someone else messed with you, you didn't get in the way, they handed you the wrong piece. You can go ahead and try to both be constructing in the greater good of the population, as well as trying to get in the way of other players. A very interesting concept, very intriguing, although I'm just not confident it actually works in real life. I'm just not. It's interesting. The concept has me 100% intrigued. I am curious to see how it actually plays out if it works. But if it does, then that's great, because this seems to be doing the premise and the promise that they're going for is the idea of hidden social deduction games for players who don't like the stress and lying and everything else that you would have in a more complicated social deduction game. It allows you to be a great access point. So from that sense, I hope it works. I think it'll bring a lot of people into this genre of gaming. But I also do have my doubts around it at the same time. As far as should you back it, should you not? First of all, we have a whole bunch of pledges over here. Where are we going over here? We have a whole bunch of pledges over here. You get everything comes in. All the pledges $1. Did I miss this? No, those are the were no longer available. Where are the other actual awards? Here we go. Here are the actual awards. Sorry, just looking for those random dollar pledges. The retail edition of the game is $22. The $40 for the Golden Wombat, $85 for the I Made This, and $100 to be part of the prototypes. If you want to get an actual prototype, there's only 3,950 prototypes left. That's all the prototypes they actually have, which is a not insignificant amount of prototypes. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that pledge level, but it basically gives you an opportunity to be part of the playtesting, the discussion, the something. If you want to be involved in making the game, then you can go ahead and pay $100 to go ahead and do that. It does seem like you'll get a final copy of the Golden Wombat edition as well, so that's nice. And they have a nice little pledge tower over here. Will it hold its value? Will it not? For the most part, Exploding Kittens games generally do not, with the caveat that sometimes some of the weird pledge levels do, because there's enough of a large fan base of the oatmeal that are willing to pick up and pay for the all-inclusive pledge level. So it's always a tricky one to cover these particular lines, because there's a not large enough fan base of the IP, and they are willing to pay for things. But for the most part, I would say for the most part, most pledge levels generally do not hold their value unless they are more exclusive by nature as far as these games go. But as far as if you're interested in it for yourself, I mean, it seems to be a fun concept. I'm curious. You can check out Tantrum House's playthrough of the game. I didn't get the most positive feeling that it totally works as an experience past the concept of it, but I could well be wrong. Which brings us to the last game on this list, and I'm realizing now as I talk that I have not planned my picks of the week, so I'm going to have to do this on the fly. We have Deep Rock Galactic, the board game, which I already covered in a full Should You Back that just went up recently, so you can check that out if you want that. I'm going to go more high level on this because I already, talked about this fully. 13,000 backers, just closing in on $2 million raised. I still think this thing is going to cross 4 to 5 million by the time it's done. They just seem to have enough of a fan base who's interested in the game, although they clearly are newer to Kickstarter in their, or at least newer to board game Kickstarters in the way they're handling things. If you look at the most recent update, they have a lot of extra, let's get back, one step back. Deep Rock Galactic is a dungeon crawling experience. Based on the IP, the video game Deep Rock Galactic, and this one's bringing you the, dungeon crawling. It's bringing you a bunch of dwarves trying to figure out how to wander around, collect your treasures, and work together in this asymmetric, it's cooperative experience. You'll have the scenarios you're going through. All the dwarves have their own asymmetric powers and abilities. You'll be gathering weapons. Again, I'm doing very high level overview because I just did a full video on this over here. And then from there, they have a bunch of pledge levels leaning heavily into, the game's expensive and it's premium and it's nice, and it has lots of fun little miniatures, although you do not have to get the miniatures. There's basically the €65 pledge level, $74 for the standee version. You'll get miniatures for the dwarfs, standees for the monsters. So those dwarfs are always miniatures because they're the A team. You have to have miniatures for them. From there, we have the $74. You have $125 for the deluxe edition of the game, bringing you all of these glyphids as actual miniatures. And then there's the collector's edition all-in, which is the most popular pledge as of right now, $174, giving you everything from playmats to extras to deluxify tokens to the expansion. And most of these things are available as separate optional buys in case you effectively want to build your own pledge for the game. But a whole lot of stuff, lots of fun miniatures, lots of stretch goals being unlocked, although it does seem those are coming to a close. It does seem, if I followed it correctly, it looks like they basically have gotten most or all of the things that they already planned for, and that means they are slowing down, they're widening the gaps between it. We have 1650, we have 1800, 1.8 million euros in order to get the miniature supply pod. Things are slowly being unlocked over there, and they clearly didn't plan for this level of success just yet. They basically have a game that's mostly finished in what they're trying to do, and they're trying to react and accommodate and deal with all the requests, which is why we have the most recent update, which has a few things worth noting, the most important of which is they plan on coming back to Kickstarter. Yes, expansions will happen in 2023. We are charging up the last stretch goals, we'll post them on Monday, blah, 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 all these things over here. But basically they say they are going to come back to Kickstarter, we are going to have expansions, but for right now we want to get the game out to people. So they plan on taking into account more feedback, more changes, giving you expansions, but that means a few things for you. The first is that, something we talked about already in the last video, or I talked about already in the last video, is that as far as retail availability, I imagine this is going to retail primarily because they tagged two things as exclusive. They only tagged two things as exclusive so far, which means for the most part, unless they're just missing out, they plan on putting this in retail. Otherwise, they tag the whole thing as exclusive. So they want it to go to retail, and there's clearly enough popularity for it to go to retail, I assume, or they're just misdoing things. But either way, that's as far as retail availability. And if you're waiting for retail, you'll be able to get it cheaper, but you won't get necessarily all the extras, and you'll miss out on those two exclusives, but you'll likely get a significantly cheaper price point on it. Alternatively, though, even if you're on the fence there, you could wait and see how reviews come in and go ahead and get it on the next Kickstarter. Doesn't mean you won't be playing this game for the first batch. Absolutely it means that. But it also means you can wait and see. Is the buzz still there once people get their hands on it? People still like it. All those things over there. So the fact that it's coming back to Kickstarter can certainly help you not really say no to the FOMO, but push off the FOMO. Kick that bucket down the road and see how it goes as far as that. Overall, this is one where I am skeptical on its holding its value. At the same time, there are exclusives, and sometimes there's enough of a rabid fan base that it might. So it does fall somewhere in the middle where it's possible to hold its value, but I'm certainly not confident on it. But it also depends on what you're willing to pay for as far as the extras you are or are not getting. And that is the last game on the list over here, which brings us to the picks of the week. Starting off with my first person of the week. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think what I want to do over here. Picks of the week time, we have, in general, I have two picks of the week. I have a personal interest pick of the week and then a holding its value pick of the week. And they might overlap again. I'm thinking of this on the fly because I forgot to do it beforehand, but I'm pretty sure they're both going to be the same game again this week. So Mind MGMT is definitely my personal interest pick of the week. As far as any game on this table, any game that we covered today, while there are a bunch of games that I have played and I like Mind MGMT, I like Wreckland Run, I like Rolling Heights, I like Astro Knights. There's a bunch of games on this list that I have played and have enjoyed that are easy contenders for pick of the week, but I love Mind MGMT. Mind MGMT is the only one of these I give it a 5 to 5. Absolutely adore the game. It is easily my personal interest pick of the week. At the same time, when looking at the other games on the table, I also think that the deluxe edition of Mind MGMT is the one that is most likely to hold its value, although with a small asterisk. The asterisk is the fact that if you look at current marketplace prices, the deluxe edition of Mind MGMT easily holds its value compared to anything else we're talking about today. The asterisk is the fact that the funding total for this campaign has already doubled what we saw in the last last campaign, or somewhere close to that. It's already surpassed significantly what we saw in the last campaign, which means all those people who are willing to pay that $150 premium to get the deluxe copy on the secondhand market now, there's going to be a lot more of these hitting the market down the road, and a lot fewer people who are rushing to pay for. So you're likely going to see a smaller bump, but I still think it is an easy contender for a game that is likely to hold its value overall on Mind MGMT. And that's basically everything. Those are all the games, whole bunch of stuff to cover. It is, like I said already, it's close. I said around 45 minutes. We're a drop over that, but close enough. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Thanks so much for being here, and as always, have a good one. It's been a long day. It's been a long day. I played... Oh my gosh, let's not talk about it. Let me just grab my phone here. Oh my gosh. Okay. So basically, here's the situation. I mean, there's no real situation. We'll have some other stuff going up later this week. We'll have Kingdoms Forlorn First Impressions. That's gonna be first impressions because, well, we'll talk about it more. There's also the Unfair and Unbalanced. If you're someone who watches this channel, Unfair and Unbalanced over on Patreon. That's our usual Patreon exclusive series. That will be going up as usual tomorrow. I don't have a lot of other fun things. I'm going to go watch Spider-Man 2, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 specifically, because we're rewatching the entire Spider-Man series in preparation for Far From Home, No Way Home, which I haven't watched yet, so we'll get to that. No spoilers, please. Really appreciate it. But yeah, that's basically where I'm at. In any case, have a good one.